take care of this one.
I've watched this film countless times. Honestly, I could recite every line by heart. Even after seeing it over and over again, it still makes me grin and burst out laughing when the roar of engines shakes the entire room when I see Bert Reynolds' smug smile behind the wheel and Farrah Fawcett's adorably bewildered expression surrounded by a pack of eccentric men. It wasn't until much later that I realised just how insane and reckless this movie truly was. An illegal cross-country race defying every law on the books lifted straight from real life to the big screen by the very man who created it. A horrific accident left an actor permanently paralysed, casting a scar on the film's reputation that would never fully fade. And at one point, real police officers with guns drawn and sirens blaring stormed into the middle of a shoot, turning a movie set into a real-life life-or-death chase. And today, we're turning back the clock to uncover 15 of the darkest and wildest facts that transformed the Cannonball run into an immortal legend. 15. Before it was a comedy, it was a cross-country crime spree. Have you ever wondered what gave this film that strangely untamed, almost feral energy? It's because, long before the first frame of film was ever developed, the Cannonball Run wasn't born from imagination. It was pulled straight from a real criminal dossier. Let's rewind to 1971. At a time when America was tightening traffic safety regulations, automotive journalist Brock Yates and legendary race car driver Dan Gurney delivered a bold, unapologetic middle finger to the authorities. They climbed into a modified Dodge van and blasted from New York to Los Angeles in 35 hours and 54 minutes. No permits, no rules, just the thunder of an engine and a pure, unfiltered hunger for speed. They named it in honor of Irwin Cannonball Baker, who had crossed America more than 140 times in the early 20th century. But in truth, it was an act of rebellion. By 1979, 5 such illegal races had taken place. The participants weren't just professional drivers, they were thrill seekers in Ferraris, motorcycles, ambulances, even hearses. They disguised themselves as priests, carried fake badges, and were willing to face prison time just to shave a few minutes off the clock. Brock Yates didn't stop at racing, he wanted the world to witness the chaos. So he teamed up with stuntman turned director Hal Needham to turn the race into a film where the line between script and reality blurred in a way that was almost frightening. 14. Brock Yates and the ambulance straight out of a police files.
Nice car, Father.
Thank you, asshole.
Every time I re-watch the scene of that Dodge ambulance wailing down the highway, I feel a shiver of exhilaration. Did you notice the race official at the starting line? That's Brock Yates himself, the father of all this madness. And in that moment, he wasn't acting. He was standing there on set, reliving his own notorious legend. In 1971, Brock Yates actually drove that Dodge ambulance with a fake medical crew and his wife in the back across America in a real Cannonball run. His plan was simple, yet outrageous: use sirens and medical insignia to outrun competitors and outsmart the police. His sole mission was to prove that speed limits existed only to be broken. When the film adaptation went into production, Yates wasn't just a screenwriter sitting comfortably in an air-conditioned office. He stood right there on location, watching Hollywood superstars reenact his own life. The ambulance in the movie wasn't a cheap prop. It was a symbol of Yates's recklessness. In his cameo appearance, you can sense a quiet, proud self-satisfaction. He wasn't merely writing a comedy, he was recreating a stunt that, had it gone even slightly wrong, could have ended his career behind bars. 13. Bert Reynolds, the biggest mistake of a king.
I want you to think of your hamsters as a little army, marching along on a treadmill, running their little legs off, just running just as fast as ever, making that engine just purr right along.
Looking at Bert Reynolds' smug grin and rugged charm on screen, few would guess that behind the camera, he was wrestling with deep inner conflict. In 1980, Bert Reynolds wasn't just an actor, he was the undisputed box office king, Hollywood's most magnetic leading man. After the massive success of Smokey and the Bandit, he had no intention of doing another car movie. But a call from his close friend Hal Needham, along with a paycheck bearing an enormous figure, convinced him to say yes. In later interviews filled with regret, Reynolds admitted that joining the Cannonball run was one of the worst decisions of his career. He approached the project with indifference. He didn't care much about the script, skipped rehearsals, and treated the entire shoot like a summer vacation with cameras attached. He and his friends were more focused on having fun than crafting a cinematic masterpiece. When he saw the final cut, Bert Reynolds genuinely disliked it. He felt it was chaotic and lacking depth. But fate has a way of surprising us. Audiences didn't want a philosophical masterpiece, they wanted freedom laughter and the unmistakable swagger that defined Bert Reynolds. The film became a massive hit, a pop culture phenomenon. Even if Bert himself never took pride in the ride for millions of fans, his smile behind the wheel that year remains an irreplaceable, glowing memory. 12. Sammy Davis Jr. and the casting shakeup.
You want to talk or you want to bet?
You got 50-1.
And you know what you got? You got yourself a bet. 20 big, large.
I still can't imagine what it would have been like if that blazing red Ferrari 308 GTS hadn't been home to the two most sinful priests in cinematic history. The Cannonball run without their madness would have left an irreplaceable void. And yet the truth is that this legendary pairing almost never happened. In the world of multi-million-dollar Hollywood contracts, everything is usually arranged down to the finest detail. The role of Fenderbaum was never meant for Sammy Davis Jr. It was originally tailor-made for Don Rickles, a master of stand-up comedy at the time. Just as production was ready to begin, a shock hit the set. Rickles suddenly withdrew at the last minute for reasons that remain unclear to this day. The producers were thrown into sheer panic. A massive project stood on the brink of collapse simply because one vital piece was missing. Then, fate stepped in when Sammy Davis Jr. walked onto the set. His arrival wasn't just a temporary quick fix, it was an explosion that completely reshaped the film's dynamic. When Sammy teamed up with the ever-charming Dean Martin, they didn't need a rigid script to create laughter. They brought their swagger, their effortless chemistry from countless fiery nights performing in Las Vegas casinos straight onto the big screen. That casting mishap became proof of one simple truth. Sometimes the most unexpected breakdowns are the very beginning of an immortal legend. 11. The Rat Pack on screen when the buzz wasn't acting.
While you're drinking, that chalk to the left, isn't that J.J. McClure?
He's nothing. Don't worry about him. It's the blimp next to him, the blimp.
When you watch Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr. in their scenes, have you ever felt that their looseness seemed a little too real? That's because it was 100% real. In today's film industry, everything is tightly controlled with strict health and safety regulations. But on the set of the Cannonball run, the only rule was that there were no rules. The duo core members of the legendary Rat Pack were reportedly in a near constant state of pleasantly buzzed from the start of the day to the final wrap. They showed up late, forgot their lines, and turned every scene into an endless improv performance. Director Hal Needham, instead of losing his temper, chose to go with the flow. He understood that this raw, unpolished energy was exactly what audiences craved. In one scene, Sammy delivered a prayer in such a slurred tone that it had to be dubbed later, while Dean simply burst into laughter and poured himself another drink. They weren't really playing priests. They were playing themselves icons of an era when freedom and cocktails mattered more than safety protocols. It wasn't professional Oscar-caliber acting by conventional standards, but it was authenticity taken to the extreme, a sweet intoxication permanently preserved on celluloid. 10. Farrah Fawcett and the action drama that wasn't.
What'd you expect, anyway?
Gangbang or something like
A
that.
gangbang? We're racers, not rapists.
Do you remember Pamela Glover's beautiful, delicate, yet slightly bewildered presence on screen that wasn't entirely acting? In reality, Charlie's angel Farrah Fawcett entered this project with a completely different mindset. She had been, in a sense, brilliantly misled. Imagine being a rising star, eager to prove your dramatic range. You receive a script about a cross-country race and believe you're signing on for a romantic action film with real psychological depth. Farrah memorized every line. She carefully analysed her character, a nature-loving photographer, with utmost seriousness. She prepared her wardrobe. She even prepared for emotional climaxes in key scenes. But the moment she stepped onto the set and saw Dean Martin staggering around in a priest's outfit, drink in hand, cracking jokes about communion wine, her entire worldview collapsed. She realised she wasn't in a serious dramatic film. She was in the middle of a gigantic playground for mischievous men. Farrah later admitted that it wasn't until she sat in a theatre and heard the audience roaring with laughter during scenes she had believed were deeply emotional that she truly understood she was in a comedy. Ironically, her misplaced sincerity became her greatest strength. Her genuine innocence and seriousness, amid a cast of outrageous characters, created an irresistible charm. Every time I rewatch her wide-eyed reactions to her co-stars' antics, I feel sympathy for this angel lost among red devils. But it was precisely that real confusion that made her character the most grounded presence in an otherwise absurd world. 9. Roger Moore, when 007 betrayed himself.
I am here to participate in your little jaunt to California.
Well, of course. If you would sign in here, please.
Rewind the footage to that moment when a gleaming silver Aston Martin DB5 appears, accompanied by a familiar spy-like musical cue. A man steps out tuxedo, immaculate posture, dignified, and introduces himself in a refined British accent. For a split second, millions of viewers must have rubbed their eyes, convinced they'd wandered into the wrong movie. But it wasn't James Bond. It was Roger Moore playing a man who believed he was James Bond. For fans of the Spy franchise, this remains one of the boldest meta-jokes in film history. Roger Moore, who at the time was still the reigning 007, chose to shed his serious image and openly parody the very role that had made him famous. He drove a gadget-filled supercar, performed exaggeratedly suave action moves, and flirted with women in the most Bond-like manner possible, all for comedic effect. This daring move reportedly infuriated the producers of the James Bond franchise Eon Productions. They felt their iconic character had been reduced to a punchline. The aftermath was significant. After the Cannonball run, an unwritten but strictly enforced rule took hold. Future Bond actors were forbidden from parodying the character in other films. It was the last time we saw a reigning 007 willing to laugh at himself alongside the audience. A rare moment of freedom before contractual clauses and corporate control turned cinematic heroes into untouchable, humorless icons. 8. The horrific accident, a permanent scar behind the laughter. Amid the roaring laughter and adrenaline-fueled chases, the Cannonball Run carries a painful silence that still stings whenever it's mentioned. Have you ever wondered what price lies behind the stunts we so eagerly celebrate? For the crew that year, the cost was the life-altering fate of a young, talented woman, Heidi von Beltz. During a staged collision scene on a deserted highway, Heidi, a promising stunt performer, was seated in the passenger seat of a race car without a seatbelt. It was a fatal mistake. The vehicle lost control and slammed head-on into a construction truck. The impact was devastating. Heidi survived, but she was left paralysed from the neck down. The accident was not only a personal tragedy, it became a thunderous wake-up call that shook Hollywood's then loose production standards. Lawsuits followed, stretching on for years. More importantly, the incident marked a historic turning point: mandatory seatbelt use in all stunt vehicles and a strict ban on altering dangerous stunt plans on the spot. The Cannonball Run reminds us that the glamour of cinema is sometimes built on bone blood and cruel sacrifices hidden behind the laughter. 7. Jackie Chan and the destiny-changing audition with his fists. Do you remember the driver of the high-tech Subaru, the one who delivered thunderous kicks and flipped effortlessly over towering walls? That was Jackie Chan. But for Jackie at the time, the Cannonball Run wasn't just another role. It was a fight for survival in Hollywood. In Jackie's own recollections, his days on that set were filled with loneliness and frustration. He approached every scene as if he were auditioning live in front of the entire world. He hurled himself through glass windows, unleashed punches so fast that cameras of that era struggled to capture them, so much so that director Hal Needham reportedly asked him to slow down because it looked too serious for a comedy. Some of his best action sequences were even cut because they didn't fit the film's tone. Jackie felt insulted and considered quitting. But what he didn't realise was that those out-of-place, fiercely authentic moments were exactly what stunned American audiences. The Cannonball Run may not have fully appreciated him at the time, but it inadvertently opened the door for a future where that young man would not only steal scenes from white Hollywood superstars, but also capture the hearts of global audiences, becoming an immortal icon without needing any Aston Martin to back him up. 6. The Learjet on the highway when filmmaking became a federal offence. I still remember sitting in front of the screen holding my breath as a jet plane swooped dangerously low, roaring over the supercars on a narrow stretch of road. That wasn't a model. It wasn't a visual trick. It was a real Learjet, 100% authentic. To capture that unforgettable shot, the production pulled off a maneuver that skirted Federal Aviation Administration (FAA) regulations without a single official permit in hand. It looked dangerous because it truly was dangerous. They had only one chance to get it right, and they came terrifyingly close to an aviation disaster unfolding in front of the cameras. When federal authorities caught wind of it, they didn't see a cinematic stunt. In the eyes of the law, it was an aviation crime. A serious investigation followed. Subpoenas were issued. Director Hal Needham had to rely on both his negotiating skills and the fearless instincts of a seasoned stuntman to prevent the entire production from facing jail time. 5. When real police crashed the set in Las Vegas. If you think the rogue jet was the peak of madness, wait until you hear about the real police showing up. During one high-octane chase scene, filled with screeching tires and wailing sirens, the filmmakers transformed the streets of Las Vegas into what looked like a battleground. Cameras rolled, stunt drivers prepared to risk everything. The only thing missing, an official filming permit for that sequence. Actual Las Vegas police saw the chaos and immediately believed a gang of criminals was on the loose. Red and blue lights flashed. Guns were drawn. and for several surreal minutes, the Cannonball Run became a genuine police pursuit between law enforcement and the actors. Stars froze, crew members scattered in panic, shouts of "cut" rang out in desperation but to no effect. After a tense confrontation and countless hurried explanations, the officers finally stood down, issuing a stern warning. Don't ever do this again. Hal Needham, however, reportedly just smiled. He knew he had captured something money could never buy: pure, unscripted authenticity. That was the essence of Cannonball, a film that didn't merely depict rebellion, but lived and breathed it in real time. 4. Jackie Chan and the pain of a switched identity. Imagine being a superstar blazing brightly in your homeland, carrying all your national pride as you march into the heart of Hollywood, only to be slapped in the face by the final cut of the film. That was Jackie Chan's heartbreak when he appeared in the Cannonball Run. In the movie, he played a high-tech racer equipped with cutting-edge gadgets and flashy martial arts skills, a persona very familiar to Asian audiences. But there was one glaring flaw: the film listed his character as Japanese. For someone who has always taken immense pride in his heritage and culture, this wasn't just a careless oversight, it felt like a deep sign of disrespect. He was cast as a kind of ninja driving a supercar while his heart beat with the identity of a Chinese man. Despite the disappointment and loneliness of working in a foreign land, Jackie performed with absolute precision, executing his own dangerous stunts without a double. He used his fists and his brilliant comedic rhythm to prove his worth, even when Hollywood at the time was too superficial to truly understand who he was. 3. OutRun, when a comedy gave birth to an electronic legend. If you grew up in the 80s or early 90s, you probably remember the thrill of sitting in an arcade cabinet, gripping a plastic steering wheel and flooring the pedal toward a blazing sunset. Have you ever wondered where that wild sense of freedom came from? Rewind to 1986, when Japanese game designer Yu Suzuki watched the Cannonball Run. What he saw wasn't just slapstick comedy, he saw a philosophy of life, absolute freedom on endless highways. From that inspiration came OutRun. In many people's memories, OutRun wasn't about trophies or crushing opponents. Yu Suzuki infused the spirit of Brock Yates's Outlaw Racers, the idea of just drive and feel it into every pixel. What looked like a light-hearted comedy on screen had in reality planted the seed for one of the greatest icons in video game history. 2. Hal Needham's Ferrari, gambling his personal fortune. Among those vibrant scenes, the gleaming red Ferrari 308 GTS, driven by Sammy Davis Jr. and Dean Martin, always steals the spotlight. But there's a secret that makes me wince every time I watch that car screech across the asphalt. It belonged to director Hal Needham himself. Hal wasn't just a filmmaker, he was a real stuntman who loved that Ferrari like a treasure. He fine-tuned it down to the smallest bolt. And yet, without hesitation, he handed the keys to two actors who were often in a pleasantly tipsy state, without extra insurance, without a backup car. His only instruction was simple: don't wreck it. Reality on set, however, was a nightmare for any car enthusiast. Tyres burned, doors were scratched. Some shots had the Ferrari skimming guardrails by mere centimetres. Hal's personal sacrifice resulted in footage so authentic you could almost smell the burning rubber and feel the rumble of the V8 engine from your own living room. 1. The sequel was greenlit before the first film even wrapped. In Hollywood studios, usually wait for opening weekend box office numbers before daring to dream of a sequel. But with the Cannonball Run, every conventional rule was thrown out the window. While the film was still in production, executives watching the daily footage didn't just see scenes, they saw a goldmine. The crew's uncontrollable laughter and explosive reactions from early test audiences fueled overwhelming confidence. And so before Hal Needham could call the final cut on the first film, the order for a sequel was already issued. There was no script yet, no sets built, none of that mattered. The studio knew it had the biggest stars, the wildest stunts, and a money-making formula. That audacious confidence became the perfect closing chapter of a legend. A film born from chaos fueled by recklessness and crowned with a triumph even its creators may never have fully expected. Looking back at these 15 wild truths, we realise that the Cannonball Run wasn't just a comedy or a car race movie. It was a snapshot of an era when freedom was valued above rules, when Hollywood's craziest daredevils were willing to gamble their lives and careers in exchange for uproarious laughter from the audience. Do you have any memories tied to this film? Leave a comment below. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you won't miss the next deep dive.